Hello, good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. This bulletin is coming to you live from our studios here at Kokomlemle in Accra on digital address GA0993341 on Joy 99.7 FM. It's also live on Love 99.5 FM in Kumasi, affiliates across the country on ABN Radio in London and around the world at myjoyonline.com. The news is brought to you by UMB Bank, UMB Speed Up, Digibank, Let's Go, Telesol 4G, proudly Ghanaian, Telesol, Just a Touch, and Mark Autoparts Ghana, distributors of Isuzu and Chevy cars. Mark Autoparts Ghana with you for the long run. Coming up in this edition, Supreme Court upholds presidential pardon granted Muntie 3 by former President John Dramani Mahama in 2016. We are live in court. Also in this edition, Catholic bishops in Ghana speak out against corruption, filth and joblessness in Ghana and demand more action by government. We have details of that communique. Also, FDA is struggling to tackle influx of breast and buttocks enhancers as surveillance reviews importers are using Nigeria to smuggle products into the country.
3 days hip up capsules, bazooka syrup, Yodi capsule, and penis enlargement capsule. The Food and Drugs Authority has not approved any of these products for sale in our country.
Also, President Akufo-Addo receives report from the three eminent chiefs led by the Asante-Hene Otumfuo-Etu II on their mediation role in the Dagbon chieftaincy crisis. We also have sport as we join Benedict Owusu live from Cape Coast for the Alcon ongoing. All that and more here on the Midday News with me, Emefa Apau.
Even before they were called before the court, they had shown remorse. They had apologized for what they said. Before the court, they apologized again. When they were sentenced in mitigation, they asked for mercy and apologized, retracted everything they said.
Former President John Dramani Mahama justifying a pardon to a radio presenter and his panelist in 2016 after they were sentenced to 4 months in prison by the Supreme Court over contemptuous comments. Alistair Nelson, Godwin Akogan, and the host Salifu Mase were found guilty of contempt charges following threats to kill judges. Today, the Supreme Court has upheld a decision by President Mahama then to pardon them. We'll be heading to the court in a bit, but first, here's Mr. Mahama justifying his decision.
I think that the overriding consideration must be that all arms of government must act constitutionally. And I swore an oath on the 7th of January 2013 to abide by the Constitution. And so every action I take must be in consonance with the constitutional provisions. The young men were called before the Supreme Court and for contempt, for scandalizing the court. And even before they were called before the court, they had shown.
So today, the Supreme Court has by a majority decision ruled that former President John Mahama did no wrong in granting a presidential pardon to the three. And Joseph Akuble was in court and joins us on the line with more. So Joseph, what reasons did the court give for this decision?
Well, the 7-member panel, by a majority decision of 5-2, today ruled that Article 72 of the 1992 Constitution allows the president the power to grant pardons. They held that the power to grant pardons includes pardons bordering on criminal contempt. So that power, in their opinion, should not be questioned by this court, for which reason they upheld the decision by the former president to grant these three individuals the pardon.
But really, what has been the reaction after this? Because it looks like it's a majority decision.
I've been engaging lawyer Elikulim Agboneva. He's one of the plaintiffs. You know, there are three plaintiffs who brought this matter to the Supreme Court. And he says he's disappointed by the decision, especially when the Supreme Court did not make a stand that will limit the powers of the president in that regard.
I'm a bit disappointed because I was seeking that discretionary power, in this country should be kept, because if somebody has a power and is going to exercise that power and we don't know the circumstances under which that power could be exercised, then we are deprived of certainty. We don't know how the law works, But obviously, Supreme Court thinks that the old position which says that, subsidiary legislation is not needed in the exercise of discretionary power, it still holds. And we respect that decision. Yes.
There are fears that, this could open way for instances where the court feels individuals have erred against the court and the court wants to punish them. The president, if he wants to interfere in such matters, he could easily end up defeating the whole purpose of the separation of powers and the independence of various state agencies.
That is one of the fundamental reasons why we came to court. We thought that the independence of the judiciary was paramount, but obviously the court thinks otherwise, and we should not have any problem if the court thinks that its independence is intact and is not threatened.
Finally, you are a member of the NDC yourself.
Yes.
These are individuals who belong to the NDC.
Yes.
Taking up this action, I know that you also have ambitions of running for the NDC flag bearership race. Were you not concerned about the possible implications, what it means for your image in the party itself?
No, I think the country and its development is paramount. So for me, and also being a lawyer, we need to do what is right in the public interest. So this is one of the public interest cases I brought. This is not the only case I have before the Supreme Court. As you know or you recall, I'm also challenging the Section 10, subsection 15 of the Petroleum Act, which says that loans below $30 million should not be taken to Parliament. I'm challenging that. I'm also challenging the payment of ex gratia every 4 years to parliamentarians. So all these are pending cases. So I think it's in a line of a list of cases I'm pursuing before the Supreme Court.
So here there, Elik Blim Agbemeva, he went to the Supreme Court together with Nana Santibediatu and Alfred Yeboah, challenging that declaration that the pardon be granted as null and void. But Joseph, tell us a bit more about the paneling of the Supreme Court today.
So there were 7 judges in this case, and like I told you, it was a 5-2 decision. So the 5 judges that agreed to dismiss the case and uphold the pardon are Justices Benin, Justice Adenyira Bafo-Boni Apau, and Gabriel Puaman, whilst Justices Doche and Enin Yeboah were of the opinion that Adaret should succeed.
But were the 3 in court today? It will be interesting to know. Were they there?
Not at all. At no point have they made it to this particular court since this case started to be heard. The reason is that they were never parties to the case. It was simply a case between the plaintiffs against the Attorney General.
But apart from speaking to Elik Blim, what really is the talk in court today following this decision?
I tried to get a quick word from Lawyer Kotoampa, who represented Anana Santibediatu in court. He simply said that the court had decided. Generally people were looking out to find out whether the individuals would be in court. They didn't make it to court, and the other reaction has been that the court had finally spoken.
Joseph Akable bringing us the latest from the Supreme Court following that decision to uphold former President John Dramani Mahama's decision to grant pardon to the Muntie 3. Now, from the Supreme Court, let's head to the Jubilee House because the 3 eminent chiefs led by the Asantehene Otumfuo Setu II is presenting a report on their mediation role on the Dagbon chieftaincy crisis to President Akufo-Addo. The conflict of 2001 claimed the life of Yana, Yakubu Andani and some others. The report is expected to recommend a roadmap towards the holding of funeral rites for the late chief and succession plan for the skinship of Dagbon. Presidential Affairs correspondent Elton Brobe joins us live with more. Has the president received the report yet, Elton?
No, the program itself has just to start. The 3 eminent chiefs, one is already seated, the Dagbon ruler, government officials, we have family members from both the Andani and the Abu Dhabi, all seated. We're waiting for the arrival of the Asantehene Otumfuo or Setu II, and then President Akufo-Addo for the event itself to start. Now, it is going to be a very short program. My understanding is that the Otumfuo-led group of eminent chiefs will present their report to the president together with recommendations. I'm sure you may be aware that this conflict of 2002 claimed the life of the late Yana Yakubu Andani II. Government at the time, led by former President John Jacob Kufuor, instituted a probe into it, the Waku Commission. The recommendation of the Waku Commission, after almost 2 years of sitting, recommended the prosecution of 2 people who were seen with the severed head of the Yana, another part of the late Yana. These 2 individuals, Idrisu Jamfo and Ida Nasugri, were acquitted and discharged by the court. Later on, government through the same President Donald J. Kufuor, put together these three eminent chiefs to look at the road, to look at the conflict, chart a roadmap towards the total resolution of this particular matter. Now, what we'll be doing this afternoon is to tell the President their roadmap, and the roadmap will include how the two gates will supervise the holding of funeral rites for the two late Yanas who are no more, and then look at ways to bring a candidate who will become the next Yana. So these are the most thorny issues that they will be communicating to the President this afternoon at this particular meeting.
Now, ahead of the presentation of this report, of course, you realize that since this beginning of this week, for instance, there have been concerns from one faction or the other regarding what the work that these three eminent chiefs have done. But I'm sure both sides are represented today at the Jubilee House. What can you say about body language ahead of the presentation of the same report that they have concerns about?
Well, one thing I've identified is that the seating arrangement itself is such that we have the Abudu gate on one side and the Andani gate on the other side. In between them is where the eminent chiefs will be seated. And then right opposite them will be President. On the left side is government officials and some, officials here at the Jubilee House. So even the seating arrangement is such that they are not seated together. We have the Abudu on the right side, the Andani on the left side. Now, all the talks we've had, the news conferences, describing the Otumfuo-led, mediation role as morally corrupt, the details of which we are yet to be told. And the details will center on recommendation as to who becomes the next Yana and the processes that should lead to the final funeral rites of the two late Yanas.
So there's been no interaction between both sides at all from what you see so far?
What is happening is a dead silence in a room full of so many people, and we're waiting for the arrival of these two chiefs. I'm sure that once the recommendations are out, we'll get a response from both sides. But what is clear is that the two of them, they've made their commitment towards total resolution of this particular matter and the institution of a permanent peace within the Dabon enclave. What this recommendation will seek to do, therefore, is to cement the already held notion. And that is to ensure that we don't go back into the days where conflict, which was the conclusion of the Wako Commission, that it was a purely war that killed the late Yana. That the recommendation will chart the way forward, that they will not have to resort to the use of violence to get their grievances across.
Elton Brobe there, Presidential Affairs Correspondent. Of course, we'll keep our eyes there at the Jubilee House and bring you more as and when we get it in our subsequent bulletins. But away from that, the Catholic Bishops' Conference has some nice words for President Akufo-Addo. His free senior high school education policy is creative solutions to serious problems of exclusion and inequality to access to education. But the bishops want more from government. In a communique issued after the annual plenary assembly, the bishops touched on a number of issues, including the fight against bribery and corruption under the current president. My colleague Fred Smith joins me in studio with details of that communique. Fred, first, what does the statement say about bribery and corruption?
It says corruption continues to permeate all sectors of our society, and the attitudes and actions that breed corruption seems to be consciously endorsed or unconsciously accepted as the norm. The immorality of bribery and corruption, which ignore the ethical code of religion, is on the rise in our country. It calls on citizens to eschew behaviors and actions that support, encourage, and condone the practice. They also call on government, especially President Akufo-Addo, to demonstrate in practical terms his open statement of commitment to fighting corruption.
So the bishops are also unhappy about unemployment in the country, apart from bribery and corruption?
Yes, MFI, they are very worried about the high rate of unemployment in Ghana today, and they say, as a church, it is committed to making a contribution to finding solutions through its new social impact investment and social enterprise initiatives.
Now, let's talk about free SHS policy, because it looks like they've been talking about it. What do they want government to do specifically in that area?
Well, first of all, the bishops describe the free SHS and double track as creative solutions to serious problems of exclusion and inequality in access to education, and they, however, call on government to address the challenges associated with its implementation. Now,
they think that poverty is a problem overall in the country.
Indeed, the bishops say they are encouraged by knowledge that Ghana's economy is one of the fastest growing economies as indicated by the World Bank and the IMF. They, however, say that their own observations show that there is still a widening gap between the rich and poor. In their view, many in the urban and rural areas do not experience this economic growth, and entreat government to roll out necessary programs that will alleviate this growing trend of unequal wealth distribution in our country, Amefa.
Fred Smith there with details of the communique from the Catholic Bishops' Conference after the General Assembly. You're still listening to the midday news here on Joy 99.7 FM. Now, the Food and Drugs Authority says it has made little progress in its bid to curb the influx of supposed breast and buttocks enhancers. Officials attribute the challenge to inadequate information on the sources of supply. The surveillance follows a Joy News report by Love FM's Nanaya Ojima on the prevalence of such products in Kumasi.
Though one person has been arrested and assorted brands of the product seized, the authority is yet to lay hands on any importer. Officials say in one of their operations with the police, retailers abandoned their wares and bolted. The task force, however, managed to impound some unlicensed body enhancement creams. Head of the FDA in Ashanti region, Nora Nakitelabi, provides details.
Obaraba cream, Hip Up cream, and Yodi cream. The others are 3 days Hip Up capsules, Bazooka syrup, Yodi capsule, and penis enlargement capsule. The Food and Drugs Authority has not approved any of these products for sale in our country. Preliminary investigations have revealed that these products are brought into Ghana from our neighboring countries, including Nigeria.
Unlicensed aphrodisiac and penis-enhancing products without proper ingredients labeling were also seized.
I would like to alert the general public to the fact that products like Lady Killer, Via Max, Black Cake in Kong, Virgin Cream, Charm Sex, Max Man, among others, have not been registered by the Food and Drugs Authority. These products have no manufacturer's address or contact details, and most importantly, no list of active ingredients.
Love News investigations, which prompted the response, established most peddlers of the commodity do so on the quiet. Samples of products were discovered in a boutique run by a male after several failed attempts to buy from cosmetics shops. Even suspects arrested by the FDA seem to have little information about who supplies the product. Mrs. Nakitelabi says the public is just uncooperative in efforts to track down wrongdoers.
The problem is the Ghanaian not talking. If people are willing to give information, I'm sure this will be easy to address, because I'm sure somebody knows whoever is supplying this in bulk in this country.
Nana Ojima reporting.
Now, let's stay a while longer in the Ashanti region because there's some development around yesterday's gas explosion. We are learning that 3 persons have been killed. The Ashanti regional minister is at the site and raising some concerns. Ohiming Teria is with him and joins us on the line with more. Ohiming, what more can you report? Hello, Ohiming. It looks like we are unable to reach Ohiming Teria, but the Ashanti Regional Minister, we are told, is questioning decision by the National Petroleum Authority and Spatial and Land Use Authority, that's formerly Town and Country Planning, to issue permits to the Unity gas filling station at Crowfrom, which caught fire yesterday. He's ordered the agencies in charge of the issuance of permits about 6 months ago not to renew the company's permit. Though the EPA declined the permit, NPA and Spatial and Land Use Authority went ahead to grant permits to the company. We're told that 3 persons have been confirmed dead. We'll get details shortly here on the midday news. But away from that, the Ghanaian blamed for engaging in unauthorized trades of the Swiss bank UBS in London, Kwekua Doboli, has been blaming in engaging in unauthorized trade at the Swiss bank's UBS in London. Kwekua Doboli may have a lot of legal hurdles to clear before being allowed back into the UK. He was removed and sent to Ghana days ago despite his challenge of a deportation order. But while in Ghana, he's got a lot of plans to support the country with his experience. He's been speaking to Joy News editor Israel Lai.
You know, when a child falls, you tell them, get up, learn from it, don't fall again. Or run faster, but run better. Those are the lessons we give children. How much more grown-ups too?
What is it that you've learned? What are some of the experiences? How can you help transform Ghana?
Well, the incredible thing about the last 3 years is that when I was released from prison, I set off on a mission, and all I wanted to do was do lectures with sixth formers and university students. That's really all I wanted to do, because the Home Office was saying, you're not allowed to work. So I was like, okay, what can I do so that I'm not breaking the rules, but I'm still productive, right? So I started off talking to sixth formers. Then all of a sudden, I was being asked to speak at conferences. So I started speaking at conferences. Then I start working with Barclays Bank, the UK Special Forces, the Bank of England.
The Bank of England?
The Bank of England. Even the Home Office itself. How to learn from failure, how to manage risk in the gray zone. What kind of policy changes do we need to put in place to make sure that our institutions meet the social contract to the people? How do we make sure that our institutions are able to rebuild the trust which has failed since the financial crisis 10 years ago? Those are the conversations I've been having, and I've been having them with literally everyone at the top levels in the UK. Those contacts, those relationships are valuable because we live in a global society. The finance industry is centered in New York, Hong Kong, Singapore, and London. There are other centers, but those are the main ones. In order for it to work, you need to be able to interact on a global scale. Ghana is part of that global scale, part of that global effort. We are a nation that's also trying to join the global group and do good things, create jobs for our young, create opportunities for growth. To do that, I think I can help by bringing together the people that I was working with in the UK with the people who are running these things in Ghana too, at a policy level, but also at the execution level, whether it's small investment banks, whether it's groups of traders, whether it's politicians who are looking for policy advice, etc.
You heard Kweku Adoboli in that interview with Israel Lai. You're still listening to the midday news here on Joy 99.7 FM. Stories we've covered so far. The Supreme Court has upheld a decision by the former president, John Dramani Mahama, to grant pardon to the Muntie Three. Also, we've heard the latest from the Catholic Bishops' Conference. They've been applauding the president for some decisions, especially with the double track system. Also, FDA is struggling to tackle influx of breast and buttocks enhancers as surveillance reviews importers are using Nigeria to smuggle products into the country. When we return, we'll head to the Cape Coast Stadium where Benedict Owusu is following developments there. And also, we have the scorecard, the latest on it. All that and more here on the Midday News.
My name is Kwame Sefakai, and most of you know me as a media personality. But I am also a family man. The UMB mobile banking app, UMB Speed App, saves me so much time by letting me do almost all of my banking transactions on my phone. The cardless withdrawal feature allows me to withdraw cash from any UMB ATM without an ATM card. I can also pay bills, transfer money, request for a loan, invest money, and so much more. So now, I can spend less time at the bank and more time with the ones I love. Bank anywhere and anytime with a UMB mobile banking app, UMB Speed App, and get the time to do what you love most. Download the UMB Speed App from your Android, iOS, or Windows phone today. Call 0302-633-988 for more information. UMB Speed App, Digibank, let's go!
The new Ghana card is more than just a way to identify yourself. It opens you up to a world of benefits.
The sooner you register for your Ghana card, the closer you are to accessing a new world of secure transactions and services. The requirements to register are as follows:
a genuine birth certificate or a valid Ghanaian passport and personal information such as the name of your parents or legal guardians, residential address, and your digital address code.
If you don't have a birth certificate or a valid Ghanaian passport, don't worry. One relative or two members of the community who have been registered and have received their Ghana card can vouch for you under oath. You will, however, need your digital address code. You will not be allowed to register without it.
Any person who provides false information during this process is liable to prosecution, leading to the payment of a fine and/or serving a jail term.
Watch out for registration details in the media and the national identification team in your community. Make sure you register for your Ghana card.
Ghana card, connectivity, access, and progress.
Thanks for staying with us here on the Midday News. Time now for sports, and Ghana is on the verge of exiting the Africa Women's Championship following yesterday's 2-1 defeat to Mali at the Accra Sports Stadium. Benedict Owusu is in Cape Coast to watch today's round of matches and joins me on the line live. So Benedict, before you briefly tell us about the matches in Cape Coast this afternoon, what must the Black Queens do to qualify at this point?
Well, God willing, on Friday, their game against Cameroon, they have no other option than to win that game. and winning that game must be at least by 2-0, and pray that the other game which will be played here in Cape Coast simultaneously, that's the game involving Mali and Algeria, at least will end in a draw or Algeria will beat Mali. If that happens, then Ghana will make it to the next stage of the competition.
But favourites Nigeria in action this afternoon. How serious is their game?
Well, their game is very serious. Nigeria are favourites, as you just mentioned, and they have to win their game this afternoon. That's their first game against Zambia. If they should lose this game, Nigeria will be out of the competition and will come as a huge surprise to many because of their pedigree when it comes to women's football. At this level, they've won the competition so many times, and this year they started on a jerky note, lost their first game to South Africa by a 1-0. So their game against Zambia this afternoon is a must-win game for the Nigerians.
You hear there, Benedict Owusu live from the Cape Coast Stadium. Of course, we'll bring you live updates of that match later on here on Joy 99.7 FM. Now, for every young woman, menstruation is a norm, but an estimated 40 million women and girls around the world cannot afford sanitary products during menstruation. According to a report by the Boying Project, 17-year-old Mekaris Seidu, a head porter at Newtown here in Accra, is one of such girls experiencing period poverty. Earning barely enough to feed or clothe herself, Mekaris tells Joy News' Faustina Safo she's sometimes forced to beg for alms during menstruation to buy sanitary pads.
Mekaris Seidu migrated more than 600 kilometers from the northern region of Ghana to Accra in search of greener pastures. She just completed junior high school and was hoping to make some money to further her education. But upon arrival, reality dealt her a big blow.
We came here, we are not getting money. Even a day, you can just walk and you will not even get even 1 cedi to go and bath. Sometimes even the money that you even get and buy pure water and drink is a problem for us.
Seidu has no roof over her head. At night, the cold bare floor becomes her bed. As a head porter, she barely makes enough money to feed. During menstruation, Seidu is forced to beg for alms to buy sanitary products.
It may be that you get your menstruation, you won't get money and buy pad. The money that you use to even buy food is a problem. How can you buy pad and use?
On days when she's unable to make enough money assisting buyers and traders carry their goods, Seidu tells me she has to forfeit baton and use the same pad for 48 hours.
At our hometowns, when you get your menstruation, you can even bath 3 times, 4 times. But here, because of money, we always bath 2 times.
The things we take for granted. It's time now for fact-checking. Today, we're focusing on some claims made by former President John Mahama at last weekend's National Delegates Congress. Raymond Akwa joins me with more on these claims and verdict. Raymond, let's start with the former president's claim that capital expenditure investment exceeded that of the last 2 years.
Investment in the real sector exceeded the performance in the last 2 years under the NPP. Development in the road sector, education, healthcare, electricity.
The verdict?
This is true. Capital expenditure as a percentage of GDP decreased from 4.5% in 2016 to 3.1% in 2017 to 1.5% for, let's be clear, the first half of this year as the budget stipulates in this case. Yeah.
So the former president also claimed that the debt for 2016 was 122 billion Ghana cedis.
Ghana's current debt has ballooned from 122 billion Ghana cedis at the end of 2016.
The verdict?
Now, this is not true. I mean, we all do know that the Comptroller and Accountant General's report, specifically for 2016, clarifies exactly the debt for the period you are dealing with, December 2016, and it puts it at 120.3 billion and not 122.3 billion.
Raymond Akwa with fact-checking. Now, listen.
So sorry, I'm a partner. The Baba Kotuaba, that's a one be our person. The president is a more memoir. I see a Kotuaba,
That was Nana Akufo-Addo telling the electorate about the new Ghana he intends to build. Now, 2 years into his presidency, your superstation Joy 99.7 FM presents The Scorecard, a program to assess the performance of the government so far. Nick Opoku joins me in studio with more on this. Tell us about The Scorecard, Nick.
Well, MFI, you do know that here at JoyFM and Multimedia, we do take our constitutional mandate of holding the government accountable very seriously. It's for that reason that we believe that after 2 years in government, we need to be able to assess the performance of government in office. They made a number of promises before the 2016 elections, and it's for that reason that people voted, for them. So what we're trying to do is to do some assessment using thematic areas like the economy. They promise to create jobs. In health, they promise to restructure the National Health Insurance Scheme and a number of other promises. So we'll be getting civil society people, technocrats and industry experts to do these assessments. So
who are the speakers? You talked about some technocrats, speakers and moderators for this event.
So we'll share a number of the speakers in later communications, but everybody is invited. You're Ghanaian, you need to be able to come and put the questions to the people who matter.
And that's on the 27th?
27th, next week Tuesday at the Labadi Beach Hotel.
We'll surely be there. Neko Poko with details of the scorecard. Look out for details. And that's it for the midday news here on Joy 99.7 FM. Stories we've covered in this edition. The Supreme Court has upheld a pardon granted Munti 3 by former President John Dramani Mahama, and President Akufo-Addo is set to receive a report from the three eminent chiefs led by their Santehene Otunfo Seti II on their mediation role in the Dagbang chieftaincy crisis. More here on Joy 99.7 FM, also on myjoyonline.com. I am Emefa Apau. Thanks for your company.